The Victorian era looks elegant in books, but the reality was very different. Between 1837 and 1901, the British lived surrounded by practices that today we'd consider insane. Deadly diets, obsessions with death, and customs that defied all common sense. Get ready to discover 20 facts that will change how you see this period. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Number 1. In Victorian England, doctors believed the human brain simply wasn't built for speeds over 30 km/h. They called it railway madness, the idea that the rocking of the cars and the scenery rushing by too fast could fry anyone's nerves. And there are documented cases that made this theory seem real. In 1865, during a trip between Carnforth and Liverpool, a passenger started laughing uncontrollably, then calmed down, and minutes later pulled out a gun and began shooting at the carriage windows. Newspapers at the time blamed the train's motion. Today we know it was probably episodes that would have happened anyway, but back then, locomotives were new and frightening technology. Number 2. In the 1890s, tuberculosis devastated entire families in the United States. When several relatives died one after another, many believed the first person to die was coming back at night to drain the life from the others. The solution? Dig up the body and check for signs of vampirism. If the corpse still had liquid blood or the nails had grown, they would remove the heart and burn it. The most famous case happened in Rhode Island in 1892, involving a young woman named Mercy Brown. Science today explains that these signs were just natural decomposition. But at the time, desperate families did what they could to save whoever was still alive. Number 3. In the Victorian era, having a tiny waist was such a huge obsession that some women made extreme choices. Pills containing tapeworm eggs were sold as a weight loss method. The idea was simple and disturbing. The parasite would grow in the intestines, sometimes reaching up to 9 meters, and would steal nutrients from food. The promised result was effortless weight loss. But the real price included severe diarrhea, constant vomiting, malnutrition, and, in serious cases, death. All of that to achieve that delicate, pale look that society considered the ultimate standard of femininity. When you think crazy diets are a modern invention, history shows our ancestors went much further. Number 4. In Victorian England, having a severed hand in the dining room was considered a sign of good taste. It sounds crazy, but the middle class loved decorating their homes with objects shaped like human body parts. Glasses shaped like palms, trays with carved fingers, pitchers that mimicked fists. This obsession had deep roots in the culture of the time. Victorians lived surrounded by death in a way that we today can't even imagine. Diseases wiped out entire families, and medicine was still in its infancy. The fragmented human body became a symbol of art and status. The more realistic the piece, the more expensive it was. Visitors would drink tea from cups held by porcelain hands without thinking it was strange. Number 5. In Victorian England, the elite came up with a bizarre pastime: parties for unwrapping Egyptian mummies. That's right. Wealthy families bought real mummies from dealers and invited surgeons to open them in front of guests. Meanwhile, everyone drank champagne and ate snacks. The surgeon would cut through the wrappings and comment on the skin, the hair, even the teeth preserved for thousands of years. It was top-tier entertainment for them. Bodies that had been prepared with sacred rituals in ancient Egypt turned into a party attraction in the living rooms of British lords. The most shocking part? Nobody saw a problem with it. It was considered scientific and sophisticated. Today, we'd call it desecration. Number 6. In Victorian England, there was a gruesome black market that moved fortunes. The so-called resurrectionists were gangs specialized in stealing fresh corpses from cemeteries during the night. Why? Medical schools needed bodies to train future surgeons, but the law only allowed the use of executed criminals. Demand was so high that a fresh body could be worth up to £10, the equivalent of months of wages for an ordinary worker. Terror spread through families. Many started hiring armed guards to protect their loved ones' graves for weeks, until the body decomposed enough to lose its value. Some even installed heavy iron grates over the graves. Number 7. In the Victorian era, losing someone was different. People wanted to keep a physical part of the ones they loved. That's how a trend started that today seems bizarre. Jewelry made from the hair of the dead. We're talking about locks of hair that were braided and turned into necklaces, brooches, and bracelets. Skilled artisans would spend hours weaving those strands into intricate patterns. Wealthy families would commission complex pieces, sometimes combining hair from several generations. And it wasn't just relatives. Pet dogs and cats were part of this too. Queen Victoria wore one of these pieces after Prince Albert's death, which made the custom even more popular among the middle class who wanted to imitate royalty. Number 8. In the Victorian era, having a house decorated in green was a sign of status. The problem? That bright shade came from Sheila's green, a dye loaded with arsenic. It was everywhere: wallpaper, curtains, dresses, and even children's toys. When humidity hit, the walls released a silent, poisonous gas. Doctors at the time didn't understand why entire families got sick inside their own homes. Children died in beautifully decorated bedrooms. And here's the detail that's still debated. Napoleon spent his last years exiled on St. Helena in a room with green walls. Tests of his hair revealed extremely high levels of arsenic. Coincidence or deadly decor? Science is still looking into it. Number 9. In Victorian England, going to the beach turned into a complicated mission. Women couldn't just walk into the sea because laws banned men and women from bathing together. The solution? Wooden cabins built on wheels, pulled by horses straight into the water. The woman went in fully dressed, changed clothes inside, and then went down a little set of steps already in the sea, hidden from men's eyes. Some beaches even hired dippers, strong women who literally pushed bathers underwater. All that circus for a simple dip. The craziest part is that many of these cabins had a canvas flap in front, creating a private area out in the water. A swim that today takes minutes used to require planning, money, and patience. Number 10. In Victorian England, women known as baby farmers offered a service that seemed like a lifesaver, taking care of babies from single mothers in exchange for payment. Society at the time treated illegitimate children as an absolute disgrace. So many desperate mothers handed their newborns over to these women. The problem? Several of them never intended to raise the children. Amelia Dyer ran this scheme for 2 decades. She took the fee, waited a few weeks, and killed the babies by strangling them or simply letting them starve to death. Estimates suggest she killed more than 400 children. The police only caught her in 1896 when a package containing a baby's body was found in the River Thames. Dyer was hanged later that same year. Number 11. In the Victorian era, women paid a high price for beauty. Pale skin was a status symbol, proving you didn't work in the sun like ordinary people. The problem? The products they used were pure poison. Face powders contained lead, which literally ate away at the skin over time. Blemish removers came loaded with mercury, attacking the nervous system and speeding up aging. The more they tried to look young, the faster they aged. Doctors at the time were already warning about the dangers, but social pressure was stronger. Women knew the risks and kept using them anyway. Some lost teeth, hair, and even their sanity. The irony? In chasing the perfect look, they destroyed their own health. Number 12. In the Victorian era, women would put drops of belladonna in their eyes to dilate their pupils. Why? Big pupils were considered attractive. They gave that look of interest and desire. The problem is that belladonna is a powerful poison. Each application slowly damaged their eyesight, and many ended up blind before 40. If they accidentally swallowed a few drops, death could come within hours. Even knowing the risks, the practice stayed popular for decades. Pharmacies sold the bottles openly. Some even advertised the product as beauty drops. The pressure to look attractive was so strong that women literally risked their lives for a gaze considered seductive. Number 13. In the Victorian era, Christmas cards were very different from what we know today. No smiling Santa or cute little reindeer. People in England would send cards with images that today would look like they came straight out of a horror movie. Frogs playing banjo, beetles dancing, lobsters attacking people, and even dead children. It sounds crazy, but there was a reason. Victorian England faced a brutal reality. Infant mortality was extremely high, and poverty devastated families. Death was part of everyday life in a way we can't even imagine. Those strange cards were a direct reflection of that dark world where celebrating Christmas also meant recognizing how fragile life is. Number 14. In Victorian England, losing a child was almost routine. Half of all children didn't make it to age 5. When photography first appeared, many families had never recorded their loved ones while they were alive. So came a practice that today seems macabre, photographing the dead as if they were still living. Photographers used hidden metal stands to keep bodies upright, painted eyes onto closed eyelids, and positioned the deceased among living relatives. For those people, it wasn't morbid. It was the only visual memory they would ever have. The most disturbing part? Sometimes it's hard to tell who's alive and who's dead in those images. Number 15. In Victorian England, business owners realized they could make money by putting people with rare medical conditions on display. Joseph Merrick, known as the Elephant Man, was one of the most famous. He had an illness that deformed his body since childhood. With no job options, he ended up in traveling shows where the public paid to look at him. The most disturbing part? Whole families went to these shows on weekends, like they were going to the circus. Doctors at the time visited these exhibits not to help, but out of scientific curiosity. Merrick only escaped that life when a surgeon took him in at a London hospital, where he lived his last years with some dignity. Number 16. Before 1846, doctors operated on patients who were awake. The person was strapped to the table while the surgeon sawed through bones in minutes, surrounded by paying students. Pus was considered a sign of healthy healing. Instruments went from one patient to the next without being cleaned. Robert Liston, a famous London surgeon, held the record for amputating a leg in 28 seconds, but in one operation he accidentally cut off the assistant's fingers. Both later died from infection, along with a spectator who went into cardiac arrest from fright. It was the only surgery in history with 300% mortality. Half of those operated on died of hospital gangrene in the following weeks. Number 17. London was dealing with something that today seems impossible. Fogs so thick you couldn't see your own hand. The British called them pea soupers because the smoke from factories mixed with sewage from the Thames created a yellowish haze that looked like pea soup. The whole city would be left in the dark for days in a row. People died of suffocation inside their own homes. And there's more. Criminals loved that darkness. Jack the Ripper carried out his attacks exactly when those fogs took over Whitechapel. The police couldn't see anything. Witnesses couldn't either. The killer vanished into the fog like a ghost. Only in 1952, one particularly heavy fog killed 12,000 Londoners in just a few days. Number 18. In Victorian England, if you lost everything, the government had a place for you. But it wasn't charity. The workhouses operated as a cruel system. Once inside, husbands were separated from their wives and children were taken from their parents. The idea was simple and brutal, to make poverty so unbearable that people would rather take any miserable job out there. Inmates broke stones, picked apart old ropes until their fingers bled, all in exchange for thin gruel. The most disturbing part? Society applauded it. They believed poverty was a character flaw, not a matter of circumstance. Charles Dickens exposed this cruelty in Oliver Twist, based on real stories that shocked even people who supported the system. Number 19. In Victorian England, a guy named Walter Potter took taxidermy to a level no one expected. Instead of just stuffing animals, he set up entire scenes that looked like they came straight out of a disturbing children's book. Kittens dressed as brides and grooms in wedding ceremonies, rabbits sitting at school desks, squirrels playing cards around a table. Potter spent decades collecting animals that had died naturally to create these elaborate dioramas. The most impressive part was the scale. Some scenes had dozens of creatures in human-like poses. Victorians lined up to see these exhibits. What feels weird to us today was seen as popular art and even educational back then. Number 20. In the Victorian era, having white skin was a sign of status. Rich women didn't have to work out in the sun, so being pale became an obsession. The problem is that a lot of them took it way too far. Companies sold cookies and pills with arsenic, promising to lighten skin from the inside out. And it worked, in a way. The poison killed red blood cells, making the person look pale. But the price was high. Hair falling out, brittle nails, liver damage. The weirdest part? Everyone knew arsenic was poison. Even so, sales never stopped. Women's magazines even published safe dosages. Some women took it for years until their bodies just couldn't take it anymore. Look, the Victorian era hid all kinds of things we can't even imagine. People looked classy, but had habits that today would leave anyone jaw-dropping. Dead bodies in family photos, kids working in mines, dresses that caught on fire. It was a time when appearances mattered more than life. Which fact surprised you the most? Leave it in the comments and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this.